So hi, I'm Blake Gray, and I am here with the very impressive Laura Catena. She is the managing director of Catena Zapata wines in Argentina. She also, for 30 years, was a physician until she had really the amazing timing of resigning to take fuller control of the winery at the end of last year, because her father, Nicolas Catena Zapata, started the winery, and you've always helped him, right? And now he's
Yeah.
older and you have to take over.
Yeah. Well, actually, he didn't start the winery. It was my great grandfather, Nicola, in
Oh,
1902.
wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been working with my father doing medicine and wine for 25 years. And, at this point, he needs me full time. Yeah.
So now,
And I also have had to quarantine him, because he's in his, uh, he turned 80 this year. So actually in this particular time, people need me even more because, I am not allowing my dad to have meetings with people, which he would actually.
hmm,
He's got this sort of, the stoic Italian, the Stoics in ancient, or were they Greeks or Romans? I think they were Romans, the Stoics.
yeah, not much.
But he would probably go to work and put himself in trouble. But as I've heard from many of my friends, my siblings and I have quarantined our parents.
Hmm,
Yeah.
good. Well, good for you, and good for him and keeping him healthy. So harvest is going on right now in Argentina,
Yeah.
the Southern Hemisphere. So what is that like, harvest during a pandemic?
Well, it's pretty scary for people. And, it's scary for us as wine producers because we're literally in the last 2 weeks of harvest. And it's when most of, the really fine Malbec grapes come in. So these are the most important grapes, or at least some of the most important grapes. The really great Cabernet Sauvignon, the Pinot Noir that you love is already in.
Here, got it with me.
That's right. That's right. So, but the issue is, our staff. They're very scared because 70% of Argentines have Italian blood. So somebody in their family came from Italy. So we all have, as Argentines, relatives in Italy, friends in Italy, many Argentines that have gone back to Italy, and they're watching what's going on in Italy and they're terrified. So what we have done is really taken the most extreme precautions. We have masks, we have gloves, we have distancing. Nobody eats next to each other. We have basically closed the winery to tourists. We were the first winery in Mendoza to do so. And all the people who can work from home at home, so that everybody else has a lot of space to put their stuff, to eat their lunch, to not interact with anybody. So we're taking a lot of precautions, but people are very scared. And I understand that they're scared.
Hmm. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because your medical experience. What should wineries be doing now, if while they're still working? What are the kind of precautions that they should be taking?
Yeah, so from a medical standpoint, it's kind of a hard situation to be in as a doctor on one side and a businesswoman on the other, because as a doctor, you basically don't want anybody to be ever at any risk. A doctor's job is to save people, to cure people. You don't ever want anybody to have anything bad happen to them. Not the young people, not the old people, nobody. So as a doctor, I am extremely supportive of all the measures to place quarantines. The statistics in San Francisco, where the quarantine started fairly early, they're not seeing a lot of cases. I mean, we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks. But really aggressive distancing, limiting interactions is the right thing to do. Also, we don't have herd immunity. So, with the flu, which a lot of people are comparing the coronavirus to the flu, you have herd immunity. So every time there's a new flu, people have some immunity. Some people have immunity to it. So you don't get as much transmission. This is a virgin virus. So everybody is susceptible to it. And so that's why it's so dangerous. And the whole concern about hospitals being overwhelmed is a correct concern, because, hospitals are not prepared for, all these sick people coming in at once. So the idea of distancing, quarantining so that hospitals are not overwhelmed is very good. Also giving hospitals time to get more masks, get more gloves. I am not wearing masks here in San Francisco. I happen to be in San Francisco. I just come back from Argentina
And
and
now
I
you
was
can't go
ready.
back, probably.
I can't go back. No, I was getting ready to go to Pro Wine, the conference that that we all go to. And then I was going to go straight back to Argentina, and I was unable to go back. So I'm basically talking to everybody on Zoom, WhatsApp, Skype. But going back to the hospitals having the supplies. But here in San Francisco, they're saying, don't buy any masks, don't buy gloves. I am not buying masks or gloves,
Hmm.
because they need them at the hospitals. They
You're
need
making
them
me feel
more.
guilty because I ordered a box of gloves on Amazon today.
Well, you don't feel guilty because we're all doing the best we can. You should feel guilty if you're having parties and sharing glasses with people.
Oh, no,
But
no. Nobody gets my Pinot. Nobody gets my Pinot.
exactly, nobody. But if you're buying some gloves, buying some masks, it's okay. But don't buy 10 boxes of them. Buy what you need, because in a month, in a couple of weeks, there's going to be a ton of them because a lot of people are revving up production. So that is the correct thing to do, absolutely. Now, the question that I ask myself, and it's different for the US and for Argentina. Argentina is in summer right now, and then it's going to go into winter. So right now, Argentina's quarantine is more extreme than any place in the US. People are not allowed to leave their house. They have to have a permit. Only food production industry, of which wine is one.
Yes.
And I do think that wine should be, wine has
Well, in Europe,
always
wine
been.
is considered food.
Exactly. And in Argentina it is. And it's part of the lifestyle. It's healthy if you drink in moderation, which most Argentines do. So it is a food type. So unless you have the special permit, you're not allowed to circulate. So, Argentina right now, I think, is probably going to be fine. We're not going to have a situation like in Italy. However, you can't continue this quarantine for 12 months until the vaccine's available. And so once we open up again, and the winter comes, which there's some controversy about, will this virus continue in summer? I don't think it will go away completely because we don't have this herd immunity, but it should certainly go down in numbers. But in Argentina, we're going into winter. So even if there's 10 cases left in the whole country, they could multiply.
Hmm.
So I'm concerned about what's going to happen in Argentina in the next 12 months. I'm also concerned about what might happen in the US, where my husband and children live most of the time, because I don't think they can sustain quarantine for 12 months until there's a vaccine.
Sustain it for 24 hours. Oh my God, it's driving me nuts.
Well, there's been, some proposals for doing extreme quarantine of susceptible individuals, and then allowing some non-susceptible individuals to, start working again, leave their house, taking precautions, young people, although, young people can also get very sick from this. And, there's young people who have, who have diabetes or who are immunocompromised in some way, and they would be at some risk. But that is something to think about a month from now. Right now, if people keep on going out, if they relax the social distancing, they will overwhelm the hospitals. Your hospitals will be overwhelmed, and you're buying time right now in the US, and you should do that. And I think that's what many other countries around the world are doing. What I really wonder is what's going to happen 2 months from now, 3 months from now, when having the economy shut down is affecting people as well. In Argentina, we have a lot more poverty than in the US. And, there's a lot of families that live on very little. And if the country, goes into disaster because of no production, then even more people will be affected than those that would have been affected by this virus. So, it's, as a doctor, it's such a hard time to be, watching what's going on. As a business person, I don't have the solutions, because, a lot of bad things happen when the economy is doing badly as well.
Right. Tell me about your decision that you made last year. It was unrelated to this completely, but you you were a doctor for 30 years, and you decided and an emergency room doctor to boot,
Yeah.
decided to leave it because you had to take over at the winery.
Yeah, so actually my father turned 80 this year, and every time I've ever asked my father, hey, you're so busy, do you want to work less? Maybe I should quit medicine, which, I love being a doctor. And, believe me, I'm still being a doctor to all my friends. I'm getting a lot of phone calls. So I'm doing a lot of, free doctoring, which is my favorite kind of doctoring. And I said to my dad, do you think I should really, you know, move full time to running the winery? And he said, you know what? I told myself 30 years ago I would never ask you to do that. So you have to make that decision. And when he turned 80, I said, you know what? He's worked so hard, and he's working really hard right now on the phone because none of us have ever been through anything like this. You know, he's been through 1,000% inflation. He's been through the worst economic crises that Argentina has ever been through. Since I've been working, since most of the team that's actually younger than me has been working, there's been crises, about Argentina, there's devaluations and things, but there's never been anything like this. Never. And so I need my father for his experience. But the reason why I thought it was time was that it wasn't fair to my father that, that I get to do these two things, and also to my team. The days that I was at the hospital, nobody could reach me. And when you're running a family business, you're really on call all the time, nights, weekends. You have to be on call all the time. So there would be days that they couldn't reach me because when I was in the hospital, I would answer no calls ever about anything that was winery related. It was like church and state. You can't be a doctor distracted. I mean, I don't even let my kids call me. They're only allowed to call me if they're actually being taken to the hospital in an ambulance. Because it's really serious stuff. You need to be focused on your patients. So yeah, so I had made that decision, and I'm watching what's happening, and yeah, no, I am getting kind of the urge to just run back in there.
But then if you run back in, and I mean, one of the worst things, and people are aware of this, but it's the healthcare providers who are getting hit the hardest because
Yeah.
there's no way to avoid being around this novel virus that, as you say, nobody has immunity to.
Well, that's not actually my biggest fear. And I think it's one of these things that when you decide to be a doctor, you kind of give up, or you train yourself not to be fearful. I mean, I've taken care of patients with, H1N1 and all these things, and I wear a gown, and I know I might get sick, and I've had friends get sick. I mean, I actually got tuberculosis in the hospital.
Really?
So yeah, when I was a resident, it was the AIDS epidemic. And well, I mean, we still have AIDS, but that's when it was really, an
No,
epidemic because
no
there was
cure at that time.
yeah, there was no cure. And you know, there was somebody with tuberculosis, and everybody converted, and a few of us got active disease. And my parents were in Argentina, and my mother's father had almost died from tuberculosis. We're talking, the early 20th century, and here I was in the United States, a medical resident with tuberculosis, which was sort of unimaginable to them. And I mean, yeah, I was in my 20s then, but I just kind of took the medications, took the minimum of days off. I had to be off because I needed to start on 4-drug treatment. Actually, one of the drugs that they're using now for coronavirus is one of the drugs I was on. And it's also a malaria drug. But basically, I took these medications. I went right back to work as soon as I could. And so I think that, most doctors go into the profession accepting that they're going to get sick. Now, with this particular disease, there's a lot of deaths. I think that, if a doctor that was close to me died from this, I might be speaking in a different way, because I cannot recall in my whole career that a fellow doctor has actually died from something acquired in the hospital. So I think maybe I'm speaking like I'm so brave, and maybe I wouldn't be so brave once I had, personal experience. I think, a lot of us are guided by our personal
You're pretty
experience.
brave, Laura. You had tuberculosis, and you're speaking about. I mean, you know, I get a rhinovirus, and I probably speak about it as nonchalantly as you speak about tuberculosis.
Well, yeah, I think most doctors and nurses and healthcare providers are pretty brave, and they're just going there and doing their job. My husband's still practicing emergency medicine, and he's just going into work, and you know, that's what people have done in China. I have friends in Italy, and they're just going to work every day, hoping they actually don't get infected, mostly because they don't want to stop working because they're needed.
Hmm. Yeah, the heroes. I mean, the Chinese doctor who first really raised the alarm about this ended up dying from it, which is just tragic.
That
Um,
is so tragic. That really made me so sad to hear about that.
hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about wine then. Maybe that'll be better. But maybe not the happier side of wine, though. But I mean, what about the timing of this? You know, as you say, Argentina as a country just seems to go from nice period of crisis to nice period of crisis.
Yeah.
Um, what is this? What is this pandemic going to do for Argentina's wine industry? I should say
Well,
wine industry.
I'm kind of taking this sort of one day at a time approach. The one amazing thing is that we just had a really incredible harvest because the weather was very even. There was not a lot of water, so the yields are down. The quality is extraordinary, and that's good. And we think we will be able to finish the harvest. People are still harvesting because we've taken so many precautions. Some wineries have actually had people not show up, and we've pretty much had everybody that we asked to come show up. We are not asking people who are older than 60, or any pregnant women, or anybody who is immunocompromised in any way stays home. We are not having them come to the winery at all, even if a few of them have asked to come anyhow. We said, no, we have to protect you. So we think we will finish harvest. Because we are a food producer, we are allowed to bottle our wine. There will be other issues like the truck drivers and transportation and the ports, and that's some of the problems they're seeing in Italy and France. That it's not that they can't produce the wine, but then how do they get it to the end destination? So what's going to happen to the Argentine wine industry? It's going to be a case by case basis. So if somebody is selling their wine in a market that hasn't, where they have an importer that's mostly selling on premise, they're going to have a big problem getting paid.
You're talking about
From
on-premises to restaurants. So people
Yeah,
are selling, and your finer wines. I mean, I know your winery makes a huge range of wines, but your
yeah,
finer wines tend to be restaurant wines, right?
yeah. So we have a lot of wines that sell mostly in restaurants. In UK, for example, we have, our importer has two branches, and some of our wines are only on premise. So that's difficult, but it's more difficult for the restaurant people who, that's their only business. At least we can sell some wine retail, and in Argentina, the restaurant business is devastated. But I talked to a friend of mine, Dante Liporace, who is just a really creative chef. He's got 5 restaurants, and he is just getting himself ready for delivery and pickup at the door. And I was actually sending him pictures of Que Fico in San Francisco. Have you been there?
No.
They're actually doing this really cool thing that they post on Instagram, a menu, and it's either vegetarian or meat. So it's easy choice, 2 to 3 people, and you pay by credit card, you can pay online or by phone, and then they do it very easy for you to donate through Venmo for them to feed somebody else. So you kind of pay double, you get a meal, and they donate to somebody else. And I don't know, there's a lot of restaurants doing creative things, and I think this will help them. I'm not sure it will help wine sales because, especially in the US, you're not allowed to necessarily do takeout wine with
Well,
food.
fortunately, I think this is the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control has temporarily amended the rules. So wineries,
Oh, really?
restaurants that are allowed to sell wine, they're allowed to sell not only wine takeout but cocktails takeout. You have to order food. But
Yeah.
the ABC has, a lot of times their regulations aren't really all that friendly
Yeah,
to,
actually,
but this is a good time for that.
Yeah, I was looking at the Delfina website and they had something about some place doing food and cocktails to go.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think cocktails transport all that well. You know,
Yeah.
is that a cocktail is like it's got the right amount of it's got the right temperature, it's got the right amount of
Yeah.
the ice you're supposed to drink it. But a bottle of wine is always going to transport.
I'm all for wine, absolutely. And actually something that I was talking about with somebody from Europe the other day, actually one of the guest speakers on a podcast I was on said that he had been stationed somewhere in, I don't know, in Greenland. And he had pretty much gone from being a moderate drinker to being an alcoholic because he had nothing else to do. He was basically sitting in that station measuring ice levels, and he said that during this, quarantine or whatever you want to call it, depending on the location, it's very easy to start drinking early, and it's important to moderate oneself. So that's another reason to drink wine over spirits.
It's a good point. Uh,
Less alcohol.
and I have seen actually Meiningers, the German wine business publication,
Yes.
says wine sales are up worldwide. I think some of that is probably hoarding. People are afraid that
Yeah.
sales will be cut off, but at the same time, in the 2008 economic, world economic recession, the amount of money that people spent per bottle of wine went down, but the number of bottles people bought actually went up. It's a daily pleasure that you can still have.
Yeah. Yeah, but I still think moderation is really important because, you know, and moderation being 1 glass per day for women, 2 for men, but preferably actually not drinking every day is the idea. I can't say that I'm that good at doing that.
I'm not good at
I'm
doing it. No.
I'm good at keeping it small, but I kind of like my little glass of wine every day with my dinner. But it is important to keep the moderation because if you start drinking more at some point, then it's harder to go back down. So I think that if you're going to hoard it, maybe put it in the garage under a key so there's a little harder to go get the bottle. Or there's many methods for controlling intake.
Well, one of us to make would probably be to have less delicious wine, but I don't personally plan to attempt that. But that's a good segue. So tell me about this. So people do not think of Argentina for Pinot Noir, but you made this. This is a 2017 vintage, so I guess this is the first vintage of this Domaine Nico. And tell me about this. How are you doing? How are you doing Pinot Noir in Argentina?
Yeah, so actually the first vintage was 2016.
Okay.
But the first vintage sold in the US was 2017. And we have been making Pinot Noir in Argentina since the early 90s. So my father and I planted at one of these super high altitude vineyards, Pinot Noir, because the thought was, hey, it's cold like in Burgundy here. Pinot Noir should work, and we'd love to drink Pinot Noir. So we planted several Dijon clones, 777, Pomar 115, and 667. And what happened was at first, we thought, wow, these grapes are delicious. But then we ran into all kinds of problems. The yields were too high. We would get a tiny little rain and there would be rot. And we would make a great vintage, like the 1999 vintage was extraordinary. And then the next vintage, we didn't like the wines. And it was kind of this roller coaster of 1 year was good, 1 year we had problems. And the whole heartbreak grape concept, that is definitely true for Pinot Noir. Oh, sorry. Do you see something on your screen?
No.
Oh, okay, no, I'm gonna delay this. I have this thing for my back. It's called Bright Day, and oh shoot, wait 1 second. I have to erase it. I'm so sorry. It's basically this posture app, Bright Day, that comes up at 2:30 every day, and it tells me to
Tells you
to
to sit up straight.
yeah, and actually my neck pain's gotten a lot better, and they're offering it for free. Bright Day is the name of it. So sorry, it just came up, and so I couldn't see you. But going back to Pinot Noir, so we, it was like we couldn't get it consistent every year, the quality. However, we kept on planting it. So then we planted at 4,200 feet elevation. Then we planted at 5,000 feet elevation. And then I planted a new vineyard in 2011, and I planted some more Pinot. But, kind of around 2004, 6, the plants kind of stabilized because we planted some vines in the early 90s. So we had vineyards that, were already, 20 years old. And no, that would be in 2012. So, we had over 15-year-old wines. And, you know, Pinot is very susceptible to age. So this is something that the people in Burgundy say. And, I didn't know if it was true or not because I grow Malbec. And Malbec is less susceptible to age. You can make a really great Malbec from a, 7-year-old vineyard. But Pinot really needs that age for the vine. And also, our vines are own rooted. So,
Which you can do in Mendoza because you have the sandy soils there, right?
well, it's not so much the sandy soils. Nobody knows because we even have no phylloxera clay soils. So actually, we have some own-rooted, some not own-rooted Pinot Noir. So in some of the really rocky soils, we plant on rootstocks because it's just too much of a struggle for the vine on a very rocky soil. But we have some own-rooted. And so maybe that's why it took a longer time, for the vines to stabilize. But in the kind of 2004, 6, we started getting some amazing quality of the Pinot Noir. And then at one point, we have the Catena Institute of Wine, where we have a group of researchers who make wine. And, they're not doing any kind of weird experiments and adding things. They're mostly just trying to understand what nature gives us to, give nature all its tools. I call it science to preserve nature and culture. If you don't understand why nature does something, then you can't preserve it. So, one of the team members, Roy Urbieta, he and I decided, what, we're going to actually start micro-vinifying every single parcel of Pinot Noir and trying to understand how the flavors change. And when we started doing that, we realized that, we had really different flavors, from here to a few feet away, different soil, totally different flavor, even just like a slightly different inclination on the what's it called, on the slope, the sunlight was a little different and we would get different flavors. So we started micro-vinifying. And then in 2016, we had this very, very cool vintage. And, the cool vintages usually highlight differences. And these parcels were so different. We said, we cannot possibly blend this in. No way, you can't blend this in because it's too special. And that's how the Domaine Nico, project came about.
Interesting. Josh Jensen told me something once. I was down visiting Josh Jensen, who started Calera on Mount Carmel, and I asked him, what is the difference between the Reed Vineyard and the Jensen Vineyard? And he said, well, the Reed Vineyard is here and the Jensen Vineyard is there, which is probably what a Burgundian would say as well. So, I mean, one of the things that I like about this, because it's under 14%, yeah, 13.5% alcohol. Because the U.S. had this stupid trade war with Europe, which we really ought to stop, but Burgundy wines that are under 14% alcohol are now subject to 25% tariff in the U.S., and they're expensive anyway. So suddenly you have this wine, which I think is Burgundy quality. I don't think people are expecting that out of Argentina, but you have this Burgundy quality, and it's much more affordable than the comparable wines coming from Burgundy. It would. If it weren't for the pandemic, I'd be writing this article saying, "Wow, what a great time for this wine." But I don't know. There's a great time for anything now. But I'm glad to have it.
Which one are you having?
I've got the Grand Mère.
Okay, so Domenico Grand Mère. Yeah, I love that particular parcel. It's really refreshing and it has really nice fine tannins. Blake, I actually have a question for you because I'm having a lot of difficulty figuring out, what to say to people, what to talk about. For example, a lot of people in my staff and my friends said, you should do virtual wine tastings. And I said, well, that's actually a great idea. In fact, I want to involve, sommeliers and all these people that are sitting at home. Some of them are not even working to, do wine education. I think it's a great idea. But I actually did a little trial run with a friend of mine where we recorded a wine tasting because I just wanted to see, is this something fun to watch or not? But we were having a really good time. It was March 15th. It was, I think, the beginning of the quarantine. We weren't, totally depressed yet, which, I think right now, I mean, I'm not depressed because I'm so busy, but I think, it's hard for my kids who are teenagers. They're on the screen all day. And, a lot of people are kind of bummed out. And so this was the beginning of the lockdown. And we're having this great tasting. I haven't seen this friend for probably a month, so I'm talking to her and her husband, and we're super happy. And then I listened to it afterwards, and I'm thinking, are you hearing my WhatsApp coming in a little beep or not?
Nope.
You're recording. Oh, good, good. So I said, so then I watched it and I said, God, I feel kind of wrong showing this to people because we're having this grand old time having a wine tasting, and some people are sick or are scared of being sick, or they're worried about their parents. And I'm having a hard time figuring out the tone, because I want to be sensitive to how people are feeling.
It's a very good question. I mean, I know that a lot of wineries are, and as you know, I'm a journalist and not a marketer, so may not be the right person to ask this. But I saw that this morning, the Wine Institute, I guess, is running a seminar for wineries on how to run virtual wine tastings, because everybody's going to have to do it. I mean, I know that in starting up this video series myself, one of the things that I wanted to do was to have it be a conversation like we're having, because I don't like a lot of wine television programming. I think if there is a way in your virtual wine tastings to make it an interaction, do it with Zoom like this, where you bring in people. That's going to be better than recording it and showing it to them, because I think that's the difficulty, that if you're in there with your friends, that, of course, what a hypocrite I am, because I'm talking to you, and I'm going to put this on the internet, and people aren't going to be able to speak in. But if you're in there with your friends and you're drinking wine, you're having a good time, people aren't as involved. And you're trying to do the virtual wine tasting, I think that they need to be involved. But then you got to send them the samples, and I mean, it's the issue. As I told you by email, part of the reason I started this series is because I think people need they need entertainment. They want to learn about wine, but I also feel like we need human connection now.
Well, I mean, the one thing about if you post something, on Twitter, Instagram, or what were you going to do? Facebook?
I'm planning to put this on my blog and YouTube.
Okay.
And
I'll
announce that I have it on Facebook and Twitter, but I'll put it. It'll live on my blog and YouTube.
Yeah. So, but then people can comment and they can have a conversation about it. And the same is with Instagram Live. You can be doing a wine tasting and people can comment. So, I think people are interested in these things. I'm just a little worried about, on the one hand, I really want to sell my wine because, I've got to pay my staff and the people who, sell me their grapes. And, we're all trying to, pay the paychecks. And at the same time, I feel a little awkward saying, "Hey, buy my wine," because
right. But let me give you this perspective, though. That if you read Eric Asimov's column about wine in the New York Times, and Eric's excellent.
I love his columns. Yeah.
He's great. If you read the comments, there's inevitably, and this is way before the pandemic, there's always 5 or 10 people who come in and say, "Oh, frivolous. No wine is worth more than $2, and why would anybody?"
Yeah, I've read that. Somebody wrote that about my wine.
Right, and they click on this column that's about wine to complain about this column about wine. So those people are out there, and they don't need the pandemic, but there is going to be a little bit of increase in this. I just ran into somebody on the Baltimore Ravens fan page, because I'm a Ravens fan, and somebody put up people were just chatting about the Ravens, and somebody said, "I think the coronavirus got into this NFL draft simulator, because look at these results." And somebody else comes in all high and mighty. "You shouldn't joke about the coronavirus because people are going to die about it." Oh, come on, it's a Ravens fan page. So there is going to be that out there. You have to be aware of that. But I just don't think those people they were that way before the pandemic. They're going to be that way after the pandemic.
That's true.
The people, hopefully, and I'm probably hear from some of them for saying this, but hopefully the people that you want to reach, I mean, these are difficult times that we're living in, but we still want wine, and we still want to know about wine. And I think I would not want to have me going party. But at the same time, that's people want wine, and I get back to this. They want the human connection. They want to know who you are. They don't need to know who I am, but they want to know who you
No,
are.
they want to, and hey, I mean, I think some of the best humor coming around right now is, something to do with the pandemic. Like, have you seen the Israeli mom video?
No.
Oh my God. So see, women have their own circles of things that go around. So in all the women's circles, the video that's going around is of this Israeli mom that on the second day of quarantine, cannot handle on the homework because she can't remember any of the math or anything. And she's basically ranting in Hebrew and it's all being translated into English underneath. And it is the most hilarious thing. You have to watch it. You're going to just love it. And yeah, it's about the pandemic, but this poor woman with these 4 kids trying to figure out their homework, and she's just so overwhelmed. It is really hilarious. So I think, I mean, I'm sure you're getting some of these jokes, and I gotta say, we have to keep a little bit of a sense of humor and enjoy our time in whatever way we can.
Right. Wine is wine. Who was it who said, it's a famous quote, and I wish I could come up with the other, but wine is proof that God likes us, loves us, and wants us to be happy.
I like that. I like that quote. I haven't heard
Yeah.
it, but yeah.
So, all right. Well, Laura, thank you so much for talking with me. I am going to end the recording, and I really appreciate your having this conversation with me, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have one again in person soon.
And wait, Blake, just for me to find it, so on your blog or on your YouTube channel?
Yes, the
I
blog,
can find
The
it.
Gray Report.
The Gray Report. Okay.
Yeah.
I know I've been on it before. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much, Blake.
Bye.